Hello my cubs and welcome to another episode of Feral Reads. I'm going to leave a trigger warning at the beginning of this video because it does discuss the topic of suicide. It doesn't go into great detail, but if it's a subject that does affect you detrimentally, then I won't blame you for clicking off and going and finding something else coming back next time. That said, let's get to today's story, which is Intrusive. Intrusive thoughts are much as you'd think. They're the thoughts nobody wants. Almost everyone experiences things like them, that little voice that says, you'll never amount to anything, or an image in your head of you punching a random stranger. For most people they just come and pass without incident. At most they might think, that was strange, and then never think about them again. For someone like me though, they come and they stay, and that's when they become intrusive or obsessive thoughts. You know what OCD is, right? Not that everyone with it has to wash their hands 17 times type of Hollywood OCD, but the real thing where the sufferer performs some sort of ritual behaviour they've found to banish the intrusive thoughts temporarily. It's kind of like that, except that there is no ritual or routine that can silence or push away the thoughts. Mine's centred around thoughts of self-harm and even suicide. I don't know whether it was schizophrenia, bipolar disorder or some other mental illness, but from the age of about 15 there wasn't a single hour that would go by where something dreadful didn't enter my head. You should rip open your belly and drag out your entrails. Slash your throat and paint the walls red. Slowly drive a screwdriver through your jaw and into your brain. Tie yourself to 2 trains and watch them separate. Cut out your tongue and swallow it so nobody ever has to hear you speak again. Those were just a small selection of what I would hear, and each one came with visions in my head of it actually happening. As you can imagine, I was a depressed child and I found it very difficult to make friends because of it. Even the clique of goths at school would avoid me for being too weird. It quickly became painfully obvious that not everyone else suffered from this, so I learned to put on a brave face and keep it down inside so as not to alienate people. This was only a stopgap solution at best, because something like this doesn't go away when you suppress it. It grows and grows until it explodes, often with dire consequences. Almost anyone else would see a therapist and find a way to dismiss these thoughts, but I wasn't that strong and I took a little more drastic action. They were screaming for me to kill myself, and I was ready to give them what they wanted. After a day particularly noisy in my head, the facade had shattered and I wanted it all to stop. I went to my medicine cabinet and almost blindly took out everything in pill form. I clutched desperately at sleeping pills, both expired and current, prescription painkillers, over-the-counter aspirin, paracetamol and everything else I thought might do the job. I think I may have even come away with antacid tablets, but at the time I didn't care. I grabbed the bottle of cheap whiskey I kept under my bed and without a second thought or instant's hesitation I started downing tablets by the handful. My skin began to tingle as my senses dulled and died slowly. I smiled to myself, knowing that soon the voices would be silenced forever as my vision began to fade through hazy colours and into a blissful blackness. I was so wrong. The voices did slowly vanish around me as the world did, but I had only a moment of respite in blissful silence before they returned. Initially I heard them as if in the distance, but my heart sank as they soon closed in and became louder and more vicious than ever before. Hate-filled accusations mingled with maniacal shrieks of glee and threats of violence. You're here. I'm going to gut you. Scream for me. I'll rip you fucking shreds over and over again. You're going to regret this. It all became a cacophony of vile voices, most becoming indistinguishable from the others, but the malicious intent obvious in every single hissed or shouted syllable. I tried to drop to my knees and covered my ears, but I found that I couldn't do so. I looked down at my hands, but there was nothing there. At first I didn't know if I was paralysed or blind, but it slowly dawned on me that I was now dead, and this was all that was left of me, a consciousness floating in a hell of my own making. I tried to yell, to hear my own voice, but through either the maddening noise around me or a total lack of vocal cords, I heard no sound coming from myself. I metaphorically wept at my situation, no real tears able to fall from eyes that no longer existed. I tried desperately to run my hands over myself, reached out into the darkness and even tried to slap myself in the face just to feel something physical, but was met with not a single sensation in fingers I didn't have anymore. I begged for relief, prayed for something other than deafening verbal violence and a total lack of other sensation. My prayers were answered all too soon. As one of the myriad of voices screamed about the agony I would suffer, I felt something slash across me like a talon or a serrated blade. It was a physical pain I felt, but nothing so plain as anything I'd experienced when I'd been alive. It was as if not only my body, but my whole being, my very existence itself had been attacked. With no flesh to heal, the pain did not fade. How I was able to feel it without skin or organs, I had no idea, but it was there and it was real enough. Another searing slash followed, and then another and another. With each one came more laughter and joy at my suffering. More and more voices joined in, screaming for their turn to hurt me. Time ceased to have any meaning. Seconds became hours, and every instant started to feel like an eternity of nothing but agony, terror, and despair. I had no way of telling how long I'd been there when suddenly everything changed. The gibbering, screeching, and taunting around me in an instant became yells of anger and horror as I felt something pull me away, and the pain I'd been in suddenly stopped. Silence quickly surrounded me, and I wondered if some passing deity had seen my predicament and decided I had suffered enough, finally allowing me to slip at least into the relative peace of oblivious limbo. Blinding light filled my eyes as they reflexively fluttered open. Everything around me was little more than a hazy blur mixed with the dull pain of light I hadn't seen for centuries. The world slowly began to come into focus, and the somewhat recognizable setting of a hospital room slowly, so painfully slowly, seeped through to my addled brain. I was alone, but I could hear the sounds of activity from outside the open door. Indifferent nurses bustling around looking busy so they didn't actually have to care. Those that did care taking up the slack and making sure everyone was comfortable as they could be. Patients in shared wards just through the thin walls trying to force small talk to stave off the boredom and depression inherent to those trapped in such buildings, and the incessant beeping of machines that would never allow anyone to sleep. I tried to sit up in bed, but my head swam and spun sickeningly, and I was forced to flop back onto the stiff mattress like a beach while trying and failing to return itself to the sea. One of the nurses passing by spotted my flailing arm as I attempted to pick myself up and half-marched to my side. She helped me into a seated position against the cold metal frame of the headboard, speaking words that didn't make it through to me in my dizzy state as she did so. It took a while for my addled mind to make heads or tails of what all the doctors and nurses told me, but from what I was able to make out, I had been found nearly dead by my mother, who had decided by sheer coincidence that that day was a good one for an impromptu visit. Apparently she had been too shocked and distraught to visit me since, but I can't say I blame her for that. Once I'd been rushed to hospital, they did everything they could to save me, including restarting my heart, which had briefly stopped on one occasion. Since then, I'd been in a coma for 6 days, and they hadn't been sure if I'd ever wake up. I'm not sure which is more terrifying, the thought that all the horrors I'd experienced had happened in only 6 days, or that it may have been in only the few seconds that I was technically dead. As you might expect, I had to jump through many hoops, go through several psychiatric evaluations, and even a short stay in a mental institution to convince them that I was no longer a suicide risk. It actually wasn't too difficult to convince them, because since then I've most definitely no longer been a danger to myself. The intrusive thoughts of self-harm and suicide have vanished, and I no longer see the images of what I should do to myself. Now, to my unending dismay, they've been replaced with overjoyed cries and laughter because they know I'm coming to them eventually, and all they've got to do is wait around for, if I'm lucky, 40 or 50 short years for my death, and then they'll have me for the rest of eternity. And that was Intrusive, another story written by me, sticking with the mental health theme that we started last week. Next week will probably be something different, hopefully even a story from someone else again. As it goes, if you do have a story that you'd like me to read on this channel, feel free to email it to the address in the description and I'll take a look at it. I can't guarantee to read every story that gets sent to me, but I will read it, and if I feel it fits with the channel, I will add it to the pool of potential stories to read. I know a lot of people are upset by trigger warnings and safe places and things like that, and just, oh, need a trigger warning at the beginning, oh, special snowflake needs a safe place. Well, you know what? If you're that much of a special snowflake yourself that just talking about trigger warnings triggers you, then maybe you should go to a safe place of your own. Now, I believe there's some room on the f***ing moon, so why don't you hop off there and let the rest of us live our lives, okay? This story is actually based somewhat on reality, and you are going to get a little bit of an insight into me now, because I do experience intrusive thoughts. I'm actually diagnosed obsessive-compulsive, and sometimes the rituals that I perform, I'm not going to go into detail with them here, but they don't always work so well. Some intrusive thoughts that I have, actually, I haven't managed to banish them, and I'm pretty much stuck with them. And yes, that does include thoughts of self-harm and suicide. Don't worry, I'm not an actual suicide risk. I have no intention of going through with it, but the thoughts are still there, and they are persistent. I wake up to these thoughts every day, and it's not pleasant. So again, this is not a situation that I intended to make light of. If anything, I'm just hoping to maybe raise a bit of awareness. This may not really have been my best work again per se, but it's not bad. I'm still somewhat proud of it. It is a little derivative, I will admit, of the whole there are things waiting for me after I die, but I wanted to put a new take on it, give it a little bit of an explanation with the intrusive thoughts take on it. As to whether the demons were always there and they're the ones talking to the protagonist, or whether they're demons of his own making because of the intrusive thoughts that he has, I'm going to leave that up to your interpretation. Mostly because that's not actually a set factor yet, that's just really down to interpretation. Once again, I'm going to leave much of the reviewing up to you on this one, because it's one of my own stories, so I'm going to be biased, so give me your opinion of it down in the comments. If you like the story, hit the like bar. If you didn't like the story, hit the like bar. Please! Because I need that inflated sense of self-worth that can only come with likes on your YouTube videos, Twitter comments, and things like that. If you actually did like it and you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button and possibly the bell next to it if you want to get notifications for when I put my videos up. And until next time, keep being beautiful to each other.